like something feels wrong in here.
My lights are off.
Ah, that's it. I was like, something is...
Good call.
I was like, it's not... There's like light that should be over there and it's not there.
I turn the LEDs off when I'm sleeping. Okay. And because I also knocked your stuff down and I tried to put it back, so it might not be exactly...
Sure, it's fine.
As I like kicked it.
I was just looking over there and I was like... But I was looking at the wall. It was like the wall was wrong. And then I was like, oh no, yeah.
It would have looked odd on camera.
It would have looked really odd.
Hello, everybody. I scratch my nose all the time. I'm very rarely picking it. But I had a ham and Swiss wrap, and so when I scratched my nose, I was like, "That is fucking maple."
Oh no!
And so I started to be like, "I'm Honey Maple." Could you imagine if I just took on a new
persona midway through?
Hello, everybody. I am Will.
And I'm Kristen.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show, your new favorite pop culture YouTube channel where we talk about movies, TV, music, and more. As always, this is a spoiler show, so you have been warned. On today's episode, we are going to have a broad conversation about The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions.
Yes.
2 and 3.
Yeah.
We were trying to watch the Matrix movies. I hadn't really seen them since they came out, and you had never seen them.
Never.
And we are big fans of the Wachowskis and Keanu Reeves,
Carrie-Anne Moss, Lawrence Fishburne.
And so you're like, both of us are like kind of pumped for the fourth one. So I was like, let's go ahead and do this. And I was very curious to revisit them because I was 18, the ages of 14 to 20 when this was out. So it like I remember it. It was like peak discourse when I was at the age.
Yeah.
The first one came out in 1999. It was a huge phenomenon. The second and third one came out in 2003.
Yeah.
I remember they were filmed back to back and they were released in, I'm going by memory with this. It was like May and November or May and December.
It's got to be something like that.
It was like 6 months between each one.
Yeah.
And that was, I don't think had ever been done before. And it was not a stunt, but I remember people being like, what is this going to be like? And I think the consensus was, especially at the time, nowadays, who knows? But at the time, I think the consensus was that was not enough time between them. There was a media fatigue.
Interesting.
And I think that's why the subsequent Pirates of the Caribbean movies were yearly.
Yeah, well, that's also, this is right around the time, like these two came out in the same year that Return of the King came out. Mm-hmm. So that was filmed all at once.
That was year.
1-1-1, mm-hmm. Yeah. So that could definitely be part of it for sure.
I have a very, I'm also assuming you watched our coverage of the first Matrix, where we really didn't get into the story. I think we'll attempt to.
I said it was a Messiah metaphor.
Yeah, I will attempt to break it down a little bit more here. But if you're, I don't know your relationship to our channel, if you're new, we tend to just sort of discuss it. This isn't really an explained, as it is sort of, I liked when the thing did this.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I'm not sure I could completely explain the plot of these movies.
I'm going to give it a go.
Okay.
I'm going to give it a go.
Okay. All right.
So I graduated. It was like literally like the week, if not the day this came out.
Yeah.
And so I remember going to see this movie with Megan and Adam and Sandra. It was the four of us. And this was the olden days where if you were going to a movie, you had to be there early.
Yeah.
So we were there like 2 hours before the movie started.
Like on time is late for something like this.
But it's like we had to wait in line just to get into the theater and then wait for the movie. And I remember we talked about everything under the sun. And literally, like the second preview is showing. And Megan goes, I never saw the first one. Did I need to? And like strangers were like,
oh, Megan.
Because we had nothing but time to discuss this thing.
The first movie. Oh, God. Hi, Megan. I love you. I miss you. That's amazing.
I remember jumping on board this one very quickly because there was an Entertainment Weekly profile that had, let's go with Keanu. I think it was Keanu and Jada Pinkett Smith and Monica Bellucci. And this was my proper introduction to Monica Bellucci.
Okay.
Because this even predates Dracula for me.
Oh, okay.
smitten. I was obsessed with her. I bought her poster before the movie was even out. Remember, I had the poster of Persephone.
Because it's in the white, right?
And it's in the white, and like the top of her head's cut off, and she's just sort of like leaning forward.
That is a good poster.
It was a really good. That's
poster.
Apparently problematic. The like decapitated women on movie posters, but I think it's intriguing. If you're well-rounded, a little bit of healthy fetishization or objectification is.
So that is something, because I weirdly don't mind it in these movies, and I think it's because there's like 5 different established women in every single one of them, and they're all different. And so like getting Monica Bellucci to be a little busty in a latex dress, I'm fine. It's fine.
Was she also
a little busty? She's so busty, like the prow of a ship. It's amazing.
I was gonna say she is so breathtakingly, lusciously gorgeous that it's like she there's depth there just by her presence. You know what I mean? Sure. So it's like she can be an object of lust.
She also has like an incredible accent, because it's Italian. She's Italian, but it almost sounds like a French accent.
I think she lives in France.
Well, and she was married to a Frenchman for a long time. It's like a beautiful accent.
Watching all 3 of these, but in particular the second and the third one, it is so funny to me, and especially with the gift of hindsight, in particular with the Wachowskis, where how thin the line between gay and straight can be.
Oh, yeah.
Because these were perceived as like uber masculine, like uber, not really toxic, but it was like the red pill, blue pill discourse, like the dudiest
and
dudes.
Like the bros are like, oh, for sure.
And watching it in hindsight, this shit is so gay.
It's so gay.
It's so gay.
This is for girls and gays.
This is for urban queers.
Yeah. These movies are for girls and gays, and like, I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings, but like, this is not for straight dudes. And I think it's so hilarious how it's been co-opted for straight dudes.
Well, in that line, I can't think of another example right off the top of 300 and Spartacus. Okay, so there's 2, but it's like that line can be so fine. It's just very amusing.
Yeah. Well, it's also something that is more actually for straight men, except for not, is Fight Club. That is literally a commentary on everything.
It's like searing satire
on everything that occurs in the plot. And so many people are like, my favorite movie is Fight Club. And it's like,
they think it's an endorsement and not like,
you're doing it wrong.
And it's just like the gay sensibilities just permeating through this movie. And I think a lot of it has to do with a fundamental, we're much, much better now, but especially in the year 1999, a fundamental misunderstanding by the mainstream as to what gay is.
Yeah.
It's like the mainstream's only real grasp on gay was the sissy, which is but a type of gay. But it's just the
sissy and the butch lesbian, because there are butch lesbians littered all over these 3 movies.
Having now seen the trilogy, what did you think?
I like it. It is very interesting. It is, I think the most interesting part to me is that I can see the blueprint for everything the Wachowskis did after. It's in this. All of it is in this. Like, even Speed Racer is in this. And it's like, that's, I think, the part that I like the most. And I will say, I liked the first one a lot, but as I expected, I preferred the second and third ones because there's more lore and you get deeper into like the whole deal.
So that is becoming a take.
Yeah.
At a certain point, it was a very hot take. It's becoming more fluid, more understanded now. But the first movie came so out of nowhere and caught so many people off guard in a very specific way that it's like, again, with the benefit of hindsight, looking back at it, it does all make sense. It does all feel like pieces of a larger whole.
Yeah.
Where a lot of people, I think, were expecting the second one to be more of the same action.
Right.
Like,
in that way, I think your comparison to Pirates of the Caribbean is very apt because in my opinion, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, after the first one, every single one has diminishing returns.
Well, they were like, what's the stuff that worked, and double down on that.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, no.
But they didn't, because you can't double down on Jack Sparrow because he has to be like a piece of it.
Jack Sparrow is only a dimensional character in the first movie. He's a parody of himself.
Exactly.
Each following they start writing for what Johnny Depp was doing.
Exactly.
So it's no longer subversive.
Yeah. And so that's the kind of thing where it's like, I understand that at the time in 2003, after you've waited 4 years for another one of these movies, that you're like, I just want exactly what happened in the first one. But
people thought badass action, and the one was the point. They didn't understand that subversions, and like they were like, what's up with all this philosophy shit? And it's like, when you go back, you're like, oh, it's in the first one
everywhere.
too.
Also, I was not expecting, and it was putting me off a little in the first one and like the beginning of the second one, and then I rapidly got on board. But like, this is a love story. There's a romance. There's a romance at the heart of this.
I think it's a little perfunctory. I said that.
It is, but I think it's that. Okay, that's though now the thing I'm most excited about for the fourth one.
Mm-hmm.
Because like in the first place,
all of these people I think have grown.
All of the people have grown, and in the second place, I love they are age appropriate to one another, Carrie-Anne Moss and Keanu Reeves, and I love that this has now turned into a literal love for the ages. Like, it's like they both kind of remember each other, but not, and that's what it appears in the trailer.
It gives me big Toy Story 4 vibes.
Sure, I see it.
But it's kind of like, oh,
yeah,
interesting. There are pros and cons. In all honesty, this falls into that. There's actually a wealth of movies that I love in concept and in theory, but the actual process of sitting down and watching them, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because there's a moment it's the entire third movie for me, but then also there's a moment in the second movie where they're having that fight on the highway. And I'm like,
oh yeah, this goes on forever.
Like, you're like, this is going to be for 10 minutes. And then like 10 minutes passes 3 times and you're like, we're still doing this.
Well, it's also, Will mentioned it while we were watching the movie last night, and it kind of just, it was almost as if it just struck him in that moment where he was like, during the third one, where they're having the fight with all the squid, the metal
sentinels.
Squid sentinels. And he was like, man, bold choice to have 30 minutes of this movie without Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss just right in the smack in the middle. And I was like, oh yeah, we have not seen them in a minute. It was a lot. That's the thing, is like, it's also, I think the scene on the highway and the scene fighting the Sentinels, those I think are the like fan service scenes that are like, well, they want the crazy action and they want this and they want to see the stuff, which is fine. But then I think they did it too much.
Well, I think the issue for me, and if I have to watch one, if I'm watching one, I'm probably watching the second one.
Yeah.
I'm probably watching Reloaded.
I agree. I think that was probably my favorite one.
They don't fully master the balance between the two things. There's just these like staggeringly long still exposition dumps.
Yeah.
And then the like explosioniest of explosions, and it just like I wish they were a little bit better integrated, a la something we watched and loved this year, like something like A Midnight Mass, which is not explosiony. That's not what I mean, but it's like Midnight Mass was very talky and very philosophical.
Yeah, but the moments of stillness really helped the moments of,
it felt more
action.
cohesive in a way, where this feels very like
up and down and up and down. No, I totally agree with that. And I think that is going to be something. I predict that the fourth one is going to end up being my favorite, because I think it's going to be prettier, because there's already so much more color than there is in these three.
There's a richness.
There is a richness. So I think it's going to be prettier and richer. And I think that marriage of action and talky philosophy exposition is going to be a lot more like
because
unified.
If they are focusing on the love story, that it cuts the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, we're previewing or pre-reviewing a movie. That's not.
No, I know. I am. That's my anticipation at this moment, is that I'm gonna think the fourth one is the best one.
What did you think of the aspects of the movie, the plots, the characters? Were there things you liked? Were there things like what did you respond to?
Sure. I was not actually expecting it, but I think I responded the most to Carrie-Anne Moss as Trinity. She doesn't even get a lot to do or say, but there's something about, and especially for her having been like relatively young at the time, and like these movies, the first one was her big break, and so like this franchise was her big break. And so I think there's something really impressive about the amount of gravitas she's able to bring to this
Well, she's
role.
not a damsel.
She's not a damsel.
And she's not, we were talking about it in the movie. She is extremely attractive. That's not what I'm going to say. What I was going to say is that she's not pretty in the conventional way you would anticipate. She's a handsome woman.
She's not like the average female lead. Like,
well, she's not a princess.
Lead. Yeah.
And so I think that that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get into the female warrior, we call it the cop with the French braid.
Yeah,
that's a dicey character to land. That's a hard character to land, and she doesn't do it that way.
And I was gonna say, I felt a couple times like they were almost going that direction with Jada Pinkett Smith, and then she pulled out of it really easy too.
Okay,
because she was not my favorite part of these movies by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think she was very good at acting when she was younger.
So we talked about that too, because I made a comment. I remember not particularly liking her, and I like her more now. And so I started to say, I was like, did she just sort of need a gravitas? Like, was she too young?
It's possible
that it didn't fully.
Yeah. Well, she also, it's like her character is kind of like a bizarre note in this movie because she's a captain of her own ship, which is interesting. But then she's also torn between these two other men. But it's like there's never really there's no focus on the romantic part of that. It's like she is like professionally torn between these two men within the movies, but we get like words and exposition that she has been romantically attached to them too. And so it's just like it doesn't really get like that part doesn't get nailed in my opinion, but it was like really interesting watching that. And so that's what I think, to answer your question, I don't think she has the gravitas to pull off like romantically and professionally torn between two men who are both like her equal and superior at the same time. It's like very weird.
In my mind, it was almost like this was a 2-act story, but they knew that just establishing the world was going to be too difficult to do in an exposition dump in the middle or in the beginning, a la Kate Blanchett in The Fellowship of the Ring, sort of being like,
yeah.
So then they made a first movie.
Yeah, okay.
And so the first movie has it's establishing the world and the main like 4 characters. But then the second and third are like, oh, and then here's all of this like Shakespearean, Homeric, like epic Odyssey stuff. And so there's the second and third, it's like we are introduced to like a glut of new characters who are in both of these movies.
Yeah.
And they have a significant presence and footprint on the movie. And I can definitely see how some people were sort of like, what is all this shit?
Yeah.
Like, because you're right. I mean, we get Jada Pinkett Smith is very insisted upon us, as is Harold Perrineau, as is that boy with the ears. Is like, it's like all of these people, whether there's like a council and
so in that sense, despite my having never finished them, these second and third one do feel kind of like Star Wars prequels, where you're like all of a sudden you're like in the the Senate or whatever. And
no, kind of. And there is
why am I in the Galactic Senate?
I think this succeeds way better than the prequels do.
100%.
However, the prequels even fall into this whole like reevaluation thing where it's like, yeah, no, they're not good, but there is material here that is valuable that was overlooked.
Yeah.
The first time. And especially, I've often said that the execution of the prequels is terrible, but I think the lore is fascinating. It's wonderful. Yeah. I mean, the Clone Wars is considered top tier.
Yeah, and that's one of the things.
The animated.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I liked the best about the second two is, like I said before, the lore. And like, honestly, I kind of liked the like council or whatever. Like, it was interesting. They had an interesting mix of people up there. There was a lot of like, Harry Lennox and he played Locke, and then Morpheus had to like state their cases in front of this like council. I don't know, it was interesting. And I liked that Harry Lennox was just like we can't spare the ships. And then the whole council was like, well, let's see what Morpheus can do. Let's just see. They were like, it's fine. It'll be fine. And it largely was, but it was also sort of like, I mean.
Like I said, I mean, I compared it to, you know, Greek epics. I've compared it to, you know, fantasy, legend, all that. I love that we have very traditional hero's journey stuff that, again, we grind to a halt to have like philosophy 101, 201. Like there was also sort of a groupthink that these movies were incomprehensible. And they're really not.
Okay.
I think it's the left fieldness of it all.
Yeah.
Because I said what I said. I think this is very philosophy 101.
Yeah. So that was the thing to me that you said last night that I was like, that is the most spot on comparison I can imagine. When you compared it to Teen Wolf.
I pulled up the scene.
Did you? Okay.
I pulled up the scene. We'll see if we can play it.
So there's a scene in early mid-season 3.
309, The Girl Who Knew Too Much, my favorite episode.
It's a really good episode. So there's a scene in that episode of Teen Wolf where Tyler Posey's Scott McCall is having a conversation in the guidance counselor office with Bianca Lawson's Miss Morell. And I remember when we watched it for the first time.
It is stacked. The tension.
So there's so much tension. It's like bonkers tension. But then it's like, we got to the end of the scene and I was like, what did they even just say? And you were like, nothing, but also everything.
Well, she's explaining the plot to him, but it's treated like they're talking in code.
Yeah.
And they're not. He's just sort of like, he's like, well, if he wants an alpha, what's he doing with me? And she's like, you become the alpha. And when you're watching it, it feels so powerful, but then it's stupid. It's very
nothing.
Stupid.
And so that's how I felt about a lot of the like.
So there's a lot of like
info dumpy conversations, like the one in the train station. Very interesting. I like all those actors. It was like really cool and like it was shot well and it was beautiful. And like, if I'm being totally honest too, this is like some of the best acting Keanu Reeves has ever done in these movies. Because, you know, he gets kind of a rap, you know. I think obviously the John Wick movies, he's very good in that. But he's like not always great at drama. And like, this is the kind of drama that he should do. But that conversation was all great. But then it ended up just being like Webster's dictionary defines love.
It's very like, it's like, well, how do I know if I can trust you? And she's like, how do you know if you can trust yourself?
Yeah.
And it's sort of that kind of like talking in circles.
Loop, yeah.
And it's very funny. And again, I think it kind of simultaneously exists in and out of its time. Where it's like, we can only appreciate it because it was unappreciated. Mm-hmm. Like, we didn't get it at the time, but we needed it at the time, and things are where they are now because we had it sounds like the movie itself, and it's all very, very funny. And I don't know if you watched our first coverage, but I was like, I follow movies frequently, but it doesn't mean I apply what I learned. And so it's like, it somehow only really dawned on me this viewing that anytime they're in just like a city that it's the Matrix. And so watching it this time, there are points where I'm like, so that's a program. Mm-hmm. And that I find interesting.
What was the most interesting in this one was that the family in the train station were programs and they were aware they were programs, which was interesting to me.
So, okay, that's the thing that I guess I fully don't understand is the mother and father were still serving their purpose.
I guess, but they were trying to free the daughter.
So did these two programs create a program, therefore, that didn't have a purpose, so it needed to be...
Maybe, because then it also...
That seems like that's what happened.
Because then also the Oracle was pulling like a Schindler's List, almost, it felt like. Because when she had that conversation with the architect later, and she was like, and the ones who choose, like the people in the pods, I guess, the ones who want to be free, you'll let them be free. And so I think that was kind of like also what she was doing with the little girl, like trying to free these programs and these people who are like in the Matrix and then don't want to be.
So this is, we come to the place where I try to actually figure out what's going on. And so I guess this is, it's not cyclical.
It sort of is.
I need an entry point. So the humans are trying to break free of this prison, this machine-made prison that they're in,
Mm-hmm.
and they need the one to do it. And so he goes on this quest basically to meet the architect, who is also a program, but effectively God.
Yeah.
And he explains that the system needs to be rebooted.
Well, it's because, yeah. So there were 6 already.
Neo is
or
the
something.
6th.
Yeah.
Is the 7th the one? Is it Neo every time? Like, does it look like Neo every time, or is that irrelevant?
I think so, because all of the screens in the back seemed like they were other versions.
The Matrix needs to be rebooted because it's only 99% perfect.
So it's basically, I think what the architect is trying to do is to make it perfect, but there keeps on being...
But it can't be perfect, because if it's perfect, then the humans reject it.
Oh, that I don't know.
Yeah, because he was like, I made a perfect simulation, and the humans rejected it because humans need choice.
Gotcha, okay.
And so I think that basically, in order for it to work with the machines, they have to, it's like entropy. It reaches a point where it has to spill over, and you have to start over again.
Yeah.
And every time, the one always chose duty over love.
Yeah, but then he chose...
But by choosing duty, you're keeping...
the cycle going.
So
when he chose Trinity, it went the other way.
And so it's like a conundrum, because it's like, by him being selfish, he was able to...
subvert the
expectation that he would be good. And so probably much like this second and third movie, when this subverted people's expectations and they rejected it.
Nice job.
So that is essentially what I think this is about. And somehow, by defeating Agent Smith, the Matrix reboots as a paradise where the Oracle lives with the little girl.
Sure. Let's do it. Sounds good to me.
I need another. But the thing is, I don't want to watch it again.
That's
but I need to.
Well, that's also, I can't really help because this was my first time watching it. And so I only processed so much of it. I enjoyed the process of watching it. I thought it was great. I had a good time. I did love how it all came to love in the end. I didn't love that he was blind for the last 45 minutes of the movie. That was kind of weird to me, but
I guess when he meets the architect, it sort of plugs him in. It's like he gets on the Wi-Fi or something. So it's how he's able, even when he's in the real world, he can still see the code.
Oh, okay. Because he was doing
magic.
He was doing Daredevil seeing at the end. Yeah.
There's something with that. Much like When Are We in the Matrix tripped me up in the first one, Who and What Are the Programs trips me up in this one.
Sure.
I have a hard time because they look human. And I guess that's part of it, because the programs were acting like humans.
Yeah.
And the Oracle is also baffling to me, because I read a comment when I was Googling things where, and I didn't write down who said it, so sorry, random person out there on the internet, but they think that the reason why this worked this time is because the Oracle chose to interfere in a way she never had before.
Interesting.
By telling them they loved each other.
Interesting.
Where all the previous times they had to do that work themselves, and that's why they chose duty over.
Oh, okay.
But if she interfered,
they found out earlier and skipped.
Well, it changed how they processed stuff.
Interesting. I like that.
I just like the Oracle.
Yeah.
I also really like Merovingian, and I'm not entirely sure I understand what he is. Is he just a gangster program?
Yeah.
Okay. And
I'm telling you, I have a thin grasp on them.
Usually you're the one clarifying things for me.
But that's the thing. That's the thing is, where I keep saying the blueprints for all of the future Wachowski stuff is in this. They have made these points better and tighter and quicker in many other things that came out after these 3 movies. So I get it.
You appreciate it, but you would rather be watching Sense8?
100%.
No, I really, really like Merovingian and Persephone. I think they bring because this is a very cool movie, both in style and tone, literally and metaphorically.
Yeah.
And they bring a jolt of sort of French charisma.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, this couldn't be a more me take, but Persephone is my favorite. This is a very sort of blunt, like things are named quite literally what they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, she, like her namesake, I mean, she plays the Persephone role in this, really, where she goes around her husband and helps the heroes.
She's like, I'm trapped here, but you don't have to be.
I love that her entire plot hinges around what a piece Keanu Reeves is. That she wants to make out. Because when we were watching that scene, you were sort of like, oh, whatever, just do it. It's not like real. And I was like, except for the stipulation is that it has to be real.
It has to feel real to her.
But that means he can't just kiss her and be like, oh, I had to. It's like he has to actually put oomph into it.
It's just a kiss.
How did it end up like this? It was only a kiss.
It's whatever. Just do it.
Well, another thing
of the world.
Another thing that I never fully processed until this viewing, and I'm prepared to be way off, but again, DNA of other Wachowski issues. The two bodyguards that she kills to signal her husband, are they werewolves?
Oh,
they say
silver bullets.
The Oracle says the word werewolf.
So they might
in this movie. And then she talks about how they were relics from a previous run that caused more trouble than they were worth. And her husband keeps them as bodyguards because they're particularly hard to kill unless you have a silver bullet.
Yeah. They also, I think they're like dumb though.
That was evident.
Yeah.
But there's a part of me where I'm like, so there's a version of the Matrix
with werewolves
that's just like Gonzo. That's just like vampires and like fairies running around. And I don't know. I'm sort of like,
like make that one. Let's have that one.
It's very funny to me. I do wish they do bring both of them back in the third movie. She quite literally has one line. Mm-hmm. I appreciate the fact that they bring her back and that she's in red this time.
Yeah.
And I point out, I was like, I think it's a gown because there's an overhead shot and you can see the dress pooling on the floor. And I was like, if that red latex gown has a train, I need a set photo.
Set photo, yeah. Like a continuity photo from behind the scenes.
And watching it like in all of our high def and stuff, she had like crystals in her hair. Just like, oh, there's something.
And there was just a little peak of acid green right around the edges that I was into.
If for no other reason, watch these movies for the opportunity to glimpse as close as we can to the face of God, like to beauty. Because I mean, one of the most beautiful women who have ever lived, arguably in her prime. It's just, it's astonishing.
Though she's not getting uglier, so.
No, but it is truly remarkable.
Yeah.
I was trying to think if there was any Oracle stuff that I wanted to. I don't know. I love
whatever she was mixing with the little girl was not cookie dough. That was bread dough that she dumped chocolate chips into.
The twins are there. They're a lot. The like albino twins.
Oh yeah, and the second one. They're like jellyfish, kind of.
Like skeletons, though. It's cool, weird. But also weird. I don't have anything really, really strong or passionate to say about them other than I feel like I should acknowledge them. And that is what I want from the Wachowskis. Yeah. I do want weird, cool shit.
I want Channing Tatum as a space roller skating dog man. I'm not kidding.
Werewolf. Yeah.
I'm not kidding.
Seraph was a program.
Oh, I liked Seraph.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think his name was Colin Chu.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool.
We have always the right choice, Gina Torres, in a very supporting, like a tertiary role, not even a secondary.
I have a feeling Lawrence Fishburne was like, my wife's cool.
Oh, right.
Bring her in.
Well, because I made a comment, and I mean this as this is high praise coming from me, but I was like, there is quite literally not a thing Gina Torres could be in that I wouldn't, or that I would question.
Yeah.
Like, I think I was like life insurance pyramid scheme all the way to like Oscar sweeping.
Because
like there's not.
Because then I was like, I mean, if there's another Nexium situation and it turns out Gina Torres is the kingpin, I would not be surprised.
No, but I mean, like she could be the new spokesperson for Amscott, and I would be like, this is neither above nor beneath you.
Yeah,
you exist in a plane.
She's just
that
like,
exists beyond. Yeah. She just shows up in things. I'm like, Gina Torres. That feels right. There's a lot of Mr. Smith.
I really like it.
Well, nobody's liking anything as much as Hugo Weaving is liking being in these movies.
100%.
I don't know that there's that level of joy of gravitas will ever be captured on film again, but
it's a full meal when he says Mr. Anderson every single time. It's like he's having the best meal of his life. I love it.
That's what, but he, especially in these two movies, is one of the places where my eyes just cross.
I get it.
And
especially because there's like 1,000 of him by the end of it. And you're just like, okay.
And that is also part of the fun for me is how much of this is just psychobabble. Yeah. Like the effects in these movies largely look pretty good. There is a handful of times where they were high on their supply, their own supply. The fight where the fight that Neo has in the second movie against all the Agent Smiths.
Yeah.
I'd say like a third of it really works. A third of it's like, and a third of it's like, whew.
Okay. That last third of it to me looks like all of the Quidditch scenes from the first Harry Potter movie.
You get to a digital double place where I was sort of like,
and it's like he's like waggling around like this, and I'm like, just broken, everything
hubris,
broken.
Hubris.
Yeah, we flew too close to the sun.
Yeah, and we couldn't see it then, but we can see it now. Yeah. It's like, and I think that is another thing because these are rated R, but they're.
I'm not sure they should be.
Yeah, they're not.
Is there even really language?
Sure.
Is it because of the language?
I don't know.
They're not very bloody.
I was going to say that we did get in the third one, we get pink mist, but when they're doing the fight at the goth orgy club and they're just like jumping on the ceiling, it's fun. But they're not particularly gory. And I appreciate that. They could have been, and I wouldn't question it. Mm-hmm. But it makes the moments where it is more impactful. I hate in a way that I actually appreciate. Like I love that I hate it, but I hate that the machine god is a baby face with a monster voice.
I don't think I noticed that it was a baby face.
At the end, when it's like talking to him before he fights Agent Smith, it is the infant's face.
Oh, I don't like that at all. I did not notice. That did not ping for me. I don't like that either.
It's very, very weird. Because that is a part for me where I'm like, what is the machine world like? Like what? I mean, obviously, I know they need power to run themselves, but it's like, what do they do?
Yeah. Like, how sentient are they?
Yeah. And also, hot take, I don't care for the Sentinels. I think they're weird and gross.
Well, yeah.
I don't like when they do that stabby. And they're too fast. They are too fast.
They are way too fast. Because they were like, I mean, it was like a blur of like, just like swirling metal tentacle things. You're right. They are too fast. They're like the zombies in World War Z.
Oh, I do love, I wrote the sexual tension between the Agent Smith. But they had just an insane amount of sexual tension between the two Hugo Weavings.
Oh.
Just like, I did say I love how many different characters and how many times those different characters just call Neo dumb.
Yeah.
I think it's funny.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love how indulgent the Wachowskis are. And I think while they can go too far, I think they are more on the correct side when compared to, like, say, a Zack Snyder or something.
Yeah. Because they go for the shot, but there's also meat on these bones. It's not the shot only. It's like the shot only works because of the story. And for things like Zack Snyder, I feel like, and other people, Michael Bay, Jerry Bruckheimer, people like that, I think the shot works because it's beautiful, but there's never anything behind it.
But it's like when there's time for multiple orgies, there's a lot of time. Like there's a lot of going back to both Spartacus and Teen Wolf.
Yeah.
You've got time.
That's the thing. I said that yesterday, and I was like, I like the Wachowskis for a lot of reasons, and I think a lot of people like the Wachowskis for a lot of different reasons. But for me, it's the orgies. Can't lie.
I forgot that we watched the first one like a week ago. I hate that they all have those horrible plugs on them.
Yeah.
It feels like they would be sharp in all of those orgies. I feel like people are coming out with gashes more than one would more than bargain for.
Yeah, well, and also I feel even less than that. I feel like they would just get snagged on lots of stuff, and I don't care for that. Just in everyday life, not even specifically the orgies. I just feel like you'd be catching that on like.
And there was just
ways.
like every time they like plug him in, I'm like,
yeah, it's pretty gross. I agree with you.
Are there any other things that you want to hit on?
No, I mean that's pretty much it for me. I really enjoyed the like being able to watch these all, especially close together, because it didn't feel like such a wait.
There is very much, as you can tell, we're big fans, but there is very much sort of like, got my drink, got my popcorn, give me what you got.
Yeah.
Like, give me your best shot. I can take it.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and I'm also really, really glad that I finally watched all these movies, because now I feel like do a little check mark in my head.
I have moderately high hopes for, I have high hopes. I have medium expectations.
Okay.
For the fourth one.
Yeah.
I hope to, in a way that they were really exploring the philosophy. I would desire the philosophy to take a backseat to an actual just story,
or at least have it be a little more emotion based than philosophy based. I agree with you. I agree with that.
I'm very curious to see Jonathan Groff.
Yeah, me too.
Because he's kind of, it seems like he's like the Mr.
Agent Smith.
Yeah, Agent Smith, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah.
So, okay. I guess that's good enough. I guess cut me off. I feel like there's so much more that we should talk about.
I mean, I'm sure there is, but especially.
What about the Keymaker?
Oh, yeah. He was cool. I liked him. I liked the Keymaker. The train man was kind of spooky. Yeah, I don't know. I'm thumbs up. I dug it.
10 out of 10.
And that's
no notes.
No, I have notes, but
I know.
That's the other thing too. And this is the last thing I'll say is that I've said it every time we've talked about a Wachowski's property, but I am so much more into just having people take their big swing. Like, this is a big swing, and I'm so glad that they did their big swing and that they continue to do that. I would so much rather see 100 more big swings that maybe don't go all the way than just a bunch of like middling calculated movies. Like this to me, even if I didn't understand everything, even if I didn't like everything, it's so much more interesting to me than like whatever just like regular movie, like calculated movie is coming out next. So that's the end of it for me. So
cool.
All right. Well, you can follow us on Twitter at So I'm Watching or Instagram at So I'm Watching This Show. We also have a website, soimwatching.com, which links out to everything, including our Patreon. If you would like to throw us a couple bucks, there's a bunch of...
Give us an opportunity to tell.
Yeah. Hey, man. Links out to everything. We also wrote a book if you want to buy a book. So just you can do that. We've got all kinds of links here where you can support us if you feel like it. And then other than that, just like and subscribe and leave us a comment if you feel like it. And that's it. Bye.